Yeah, so we're super excited about this new release of Whitson Plus. In this short video, I'll loop you through some of the newest functionality, and I'll start with some of the new nodal analysis functionality that we have in the software. Before, in terms of what you could pick for IPR type, we only supported Vogel, and now we also have an option for dry gas wells. If that is of interest, you just select the IPR type here up to the right. Another thing that's really slick is that before you had to pick, especially if you wanted to use a historical date to run different types of sensitivities, you had to pick a historical date from this drop-down menu right here. Now we have a really slick option where you can just click this date selector right here. So let me get a little bit more real estate out here. So the date selector right there, and then now I can literally just click on the historical data here over time, and you'll see that that date option right here, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see that that updates. So I click here, then it's day 23, and I click here. It's much more intuitive to work like that. Also, when it comes to the average pressure that you're fetching from, let's say you have run a history matching model from or like a numerical model, you can get the average pressure automatically from there. That's the average pressure at that given day. Or if you run a multi-phase FMB method and you would like to use that instead, you can fetch from the multi-phase FMB methodology instead. So it kind of ties really nicely in to your RTA work when you're doing this nodal analysis. So very typical. Reservoir engineers are doing the numerical model or the multi-phase FMB, and a production engineer can go in and then play and run sensitivities on nodal. So when you're happy with that, you click save, and you're off to the races. Everything else is more or less the same as before, and just for those of you who are into liquid loading, so liquid loading is highlighted for gas VLPs. Just a short note on that. In the numerical model, there's a few updates that I like to note. In the well and reservoir data card, we have this new toggle right here, which is called use XE equal to XF. That just means that you like the tip of the fractures to go to the end of the reservoir box that you've decided. Very similar to what we have here, which is use the height to be equal to the hydraulic height. If they're not set to be the same, you basically can have volume beyond the frac tip or volume beyond the frac height to contribute. So that option right here is new. That also feeds into all the different analysis. When it comes to the fluid side, one thing that was requested is if you change your water salinity here, if I change that to another number, then the density and viscosity of water is calculated automatically. Okay, so you see how the salinity can impact your number before you could only input your salinity. So that's also nice here, and also in the numerical RTA feature where you might like to change your water salinity. Else than that, a big upgrade in general is that you're now allowed to forecast on a wellhead pressure. And to forecast on a wellhead pressure, you need to have already generated a wellhead / bottom pressure table. Okay, so that is what we call a so-called tubing table. If you'd like to do that, just in the forecast schedule, you first change to wellhead pressure as your type, and then you click here, generate wellhead pressure table, and define your ranges for wellhead pressure, liquid rate, gas oil ratio, and water cut. And then you can also decide on your configuration and what flow correlations you'd like to use, and you simply click generate, and you're off to the races. So then you can use basically your wellhead pressure constraint as your constraint in a forecast exercise. And you can also see that this has been cleaned up a little bit in terms of the interface, at least for those of you who are super users of Whitson Plus. If we switch to another well here, we can take a look at some of the new functionality which we're super excited about inside of the bottom pressure feature. So in the bottom pressure feature now, you'll see here up to the right, there's a few more options right here. The biggest ones that I'm super excited about and has been requested by so many of you that do these different injection exercises is that you now can just activate, literally just toggle this button right here. It's pretty amazing. You just toggle this button right here and you activate the BHP injection mode. So what the software will go ahead and do there is what is noted by the info button right here, is that when this toggle is on, then you are basically modeling bottom pressures during injection. So when enabled, the switch allows to simulate the pressures at the bottom of the wellbore during an injection exercise. And that means that all the uploaded rates, so oil, gas, and water, will be assumed to be injected rates. So let's say you would like to model in the bottom hole pressures for a water well. You know what the injection rate should be. You have the wellbore configuration, the deviation survey, etc. You just click switch here. That's the only thing you do, and you just run it at normal. So if you've run it before, it should be really, really similar for you. Same with gas. You can go into your PVT module, right? And you can go in and decide, okay, I would like to create a fluid. You can change the method here to be fluid composition method, and you like to have a nitrogen well, or you would like to have a 100% CO2 well, or something in between, like even an H2S well or whatever, natural gas, doesn't matter as long as you do that and also upload a gas rate, you're off to the races and can also model the bottom hole pressure associated with that injection. Another thing that has been requested a ton is the option to not only compute the BHP through the flowing side, which is what we're doing right now in the bottom hole pressure exercise or calculation. So now we can go in here, toggle from flowing side to quiet side. So we now support also a quiet side bottom hole pressure option, right? Right. Awesome. So I think in terms of the bottom hole pressure, there's also other things there that you can read in the release notes, but from a more kind of a bulk run perspective, we're adding a lot more functionality there as well. But in terms of the new things now is that you can go up here to the wells and you can go in to click export, and you can export all the calculated bottom hole pressure data in one Excel file. So you just literally get all the calculated or basically every single data point for every single well that you have selected, and there are different calculations for all historical times in an Excel sheet. So that's very, very relevant for people who like to compare the bottom hole pressures measured, for instance, versus calculated ones, if you would like to do a tuning exercise, etc. You can also go in and bulk run the BHP now. So you can just click the bottom hole pressure up here under PVT, and you're basically bulk running all of these exercises right here. So in this case, this is what we're dealing with. Perfect. So just because of time, I'll also try to make sure that I run through some of the new things on the RTA side of things as well. So just to at least show some of the new things in analytical RTA now is that you can go in and add derivatives in general. So I'll zoom a little bit. So if you would like to add derivatives in the plot right here, which you can see in this particular scenario right here, you simply click the plot derivatives here. You can also click that in this button right here. They're tied together. So when I click it, you can look at the derivatives in both the square root of time plot and the pressure normalized rate plot and use that for flow regime identification. When it comes to what type of derivative function you like to use, you can down to the left here, once you have toggled that derivative on, change between Bourdais weighted central difference or central difference right here, which ones you would like to use for plotting the derivatives. Okay, and then you can change the window size and whatnot here to the right. Okie doke. So that's some of the new things related to analytical RTA. Now you can also add slopes in every single plot here. So you have slopes in all of these plots. You have also slopes in the fractional RTA plots as well that you can start to add. That has been requested by many of you, and you have that here as well. What you'll also see in the analytical RTA now, which has been requested by a lot of you, especially in features where you can drag and drop slopes and whatnot, is to have an option to essentially lock the plot. So if I lock the zoom right here, I can't change the axes anymore. They're fixed. And that could be nice because then I'm not able to use the built-in zooming functionality. So if I only would like to change the slope, I can go in and lock the plot so it doesn't change. And then if I update it, now I can go in and zoom as well. Because what happens sometimes is if I'm going here and change the slope, if I'm just a little bit on the outside, I end up doing this instead of changing my slope. So that's a way for you to at least foreset that if you don't want to do that in general. So that's a little bit of the new things on the analytical RTA side. These derivatives, by the way, they're also possible to use if I go in here, let me just set a bottom hole pressure. So they're also possible to use in the char pressure group. So in the char pressure group, there's a lot of new functionality as well, but the main one is being able to change the derivative function if you'd like to. So you have three different derivative functions that you can use: the Bourdais weighted central difference and central difference. There is also a little keynote that you can put in here. You can also flip to dates, and we also have this lock zoom option here as well. And in all of these features where you essentially can move move slopes around in general on the plot. There's also a toggle. I haven't really initialized this feature right here, right now, but if you have some data, this is pretty, not really noisy, but let's say you had some data right here and you wanted to flip between using the pressure integral versus just regular pressures, you can do that to reduce noise up here to the right. Awesome. There has also been a big upgrade in terms of our DCA functionality, and we're actually doubling down on that now between this release and the next release. But one thing that has been requested by many is to have the rate versus cume option up here to the right. So now we can toggle on that and basically drag and drop in cume space as well. And just remember the different shortcuts up here. So if you click this icon right there, you can essentially move the whole curve up and down, and then you can also just use these call it toggles or whatnot to move the curve as you like. Also, if you lock in the B parameter now, then and you change stuff graphically like this on the plot, yeah, the B parameter is locked as well. Very good. And there's also a functionality that's been requested by many. If you have created a type wall for this particular project, you can go in and import that type wall from this project or another one, and then you can essentially plot them on the same plot. Okay. So if I have a type wall here in this plot at the top here, for instance, you can go in and see the example type wall, and you can plot them on the same plot here up to the right. So if I just go in here, add 5,000, I can then compare these two different lines here at the top. Very good. On the multi-well diagnostic plot, we have a little bit of more functionality. Now, one big thing that has been added is related to the viewing mode. So now you can flip between a single plot and creating 2x2 plots. So you can have multiple templates plotted on the screen at the same time. So if I go in here, select the well, and I can pick essentially different templates that I would like to display on the screen at the same time, and I can also add multiple wells as well. So I can just customize this as I would like to. So we'd love to get your feedback on some of this functionality as well. Just remember, if the legends are getting really busy, like here, you can also hide the legends with this icon up here to the right. You also see that if you have a group defined, we'll talk about that in a sec. If you have a group defined, you can also use that private group or company-wide group multiple times down here to the right. So very similar to what you have in type wall and diagnostic plot. So if I went into the wells here, that brings me into the next part of the updates is related to filtering. So now I can go in here and group these wells together, for instance, call these the Whitson group. I can make that company-wide or private as I like. And I can also now add them to an existing group that you see up here. And once we've added them to the group, they show up here to the right with the tag. Then if I go down to diagnostic plot right now, and I toggle the Whitson group, you'll see those wells right there are the ones being selected in the group. Okay, so that's very similar to what you can do in type wall, for instance, as well. That you can just plot these wells if you like to, and then they go to the top of the screen. Okie doke. Very good. In the flow material balance, there is something that has been requested by many. I'll just go to a well that has flow material balance right here. As a lasso fit option. So if you just toggle around the lasso fit, you can just release, and the lasso fit will do its job. It is also possible now to bulk run the flow material balance. So you can just select all of these, click run, and say, I would like to run the flow material balance up here to the right. Else than that, there's a lot of other things that I'm not going to detail of here, but in general, there's been a big focus on performance upgrades. So now there's a prioritization queue when you launch calculations. So people who launch calculations through the API or run bulk calculations, they will have a lower priority in the queue than people who run stuff manually in the front end. That's typically because people who run stuff in the front end, they would like an instantaneous user experience, while people who run things through the API and whatnot, they don't necessarily need those results immediately back. Else than that, we've included what's called WebGL in all the plots now, so the plot should be able to at least handle 10 times as many data points at the same times. We've also now made the database backups. They with all the history. That happens that happens every week, so that's also very good. And we've also made a bunch of upgrades to the database and how we handle our database on our end. Last things I'll just mention real quick is a few things related to the plots that are new. And before that, I can also go in and mention that we have a new option related to projects now. So if I go in here and make a project restricted, then this project tag right here will update to be restricted. As you see right there, I don't know what, yeah, there we go. So once a project is restricted, it's accessible to everyone inside of the organization, but only the owners of that project can change both production data and wellbore data. So if you go into that and you're not the project owner, you can't change any of those two. In the different plots now, in every single plot, you should now have a new option up to the right related to zoom. So everybody knows that, let's say I'm dealing with this pressure normalized rate plot right here, and I'd like to change the max part of the axis. I can just click here and click 10. I can also go out here and make this, let's say I want to make this 1,000. I can do that already. But another way of doing it would be to go in and click that plot or the button up here. You can say, okay, instead of making this 1,000 and 1,000, I'd like to put this to max of 10, etc. So you can just go ahead and just use this functionality right there if you think that makes more sense for you or not. Another thing that I'm super excited about in terms of deleting data is now we have a graphical delete. So a graphical delete up here to the right allows you to either go in and delete all the data points with just a single click instead of having to open the edit all, click, select all, and then delete and save. You can simply just go here, delete all data, or you can use the visual delete. So let's say you have some data pre and post that you'd like to remove. You can simply just drag these lines here and delete the selected data. So everything in between the lines is what's being honored now, which is pretty slick functionality in my book. Last thing I'll try to show here is a option related to using GOR and bottom pressure data in the plot right here in initializing a reservoir fluid. So when it comes to the GOR or the PVT feature, you can use what's called GOR versus PHP here at the top. If you use the GOR and PSET method, you now have two lines. You basically have the straight line right here that gives you the GOR. And then when I move this line right here to the right, that is what changes the saturation pressure right here. So this is just pressure versus GOR. And you can now, based on the production data, try to find a fluid composition that gives you a GOR of 750 and a saturation pressure of 2,900. It's a really slick new add-on to the initialization of reservoir fluids. So with that, I'll stop the recording, and if you have any questions, would like us to loop you through some of the new updates, feel free to reach out to us. And in the meanwhile, just let us know if you're experiencing any issues with the new functionality, then we'll be happy to help and fixing those things ASAP.